Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is the daily medicine transmission for December 9th, 2021. Welcome to, what day is it? Oh gosh, it's Thursday. Do you still feel like that time is speeding up and condensing? Because I've had some interesting feedback from people that have confirmed that in no pun intended, real time. So welcome back, everyone. And if you're new to this channel, welcome. This is where we, go through the daily astrology. We go through the intuitive message that comes through and wrap it all up into a neat little package to present to you, and that we can all kind of converge around together. So I hope everyone is doing well, taking very good care of themselves. The earth is shaking and moving, and things are happening, and in real time, as I said before, and also out in the ether, right? And internally as well. So how is everyone doing? I'm really curious to see what people are feeling, how it's going for them, anything that is coming to awareness, or any insight or struggles or challenges. If you need support, that is really one of the most important things about coming together in these transmissions, and why I want to provide a space. I'm here learning just like everybody else and sharing my experience and help facilitate this process for all of us. But part of it too is that we can really support each other and be here for each other as we all individually and uniquely go through this process together. So let us know in the chat, or let us know in the comments how you're feeling, what's going on for you. The good thing about having such a small audience or following, although it is growing incrementally, of course, and very organically, is that we can all really respond to each other directly, and it's a much more intimate and personal type of experience. And I really value that. You don't really get so much of that when you have, when you are engaging with people with massive followings and huge channels, right? That's important, and they have a large audience, and they can interface with people at a much broader spectrum. But at the same time, we can be in our little cul-de-sac over here and really support each other in this type of community, which is really what it's all about, and where we're going to find our most empowerment, I think. So let us know how you're doing and what's going on for you. So there's a couple things that I just want to bring attention to. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago when we were really looking at the Schumann resonance and how it corresponded and correlated to seismic activity? And there's also a connection to with the geoelectric circuitry as well, right? The electrical circuitry in the atmosphere of the planet, and seismic activity. We talked about that, and we just kind of brought it up, and we're just looking at raw data and just, putting together dots, right? Connecting some dots. Well, one thing I had mentioned at that point is, you really don't have to worry much about the Pacific Northwest until you see a lot of activity in that subduction zone. Well, and this is not meant to freak anybody out, and you may be paying attention to it already. Perhaps you've even felt it. But in the last 2 days leading, and it's still happening today, there have been over 50 earthquakes in the Cascadian subduction zone off the coast of Oregon. At least 12, if not more, especially today, they keep happening, have been over the 5 magnitude. This is a big deal, and this really signals potentially the foreshocks of something much, much bigger happening at that. So you are living in that area still, or close to it, it's just something to pay attention to. And if you've ever, if you are somebody that takes seriously your disaster preparation, this might be a good time to take inventory of what you do have, and what resources you have access to in a situation like that, because it will I'm really praying, honestly, very much praying that the pressure is released as a result of these these smaller magnitude shakes in this fault line or this subduction zone. And if you don't know what that is, it's really basically these two plates coming together, and one has squeezed itself under the other and pushing it up. And eventually that pressure will have to be released, and there will be a massive rebalancing of those two plates, which will lead to a very, very massive earthquake in that subduction zone, which is about 70 miles, roughly, maybe a little more, off the coast of Oregon. So it would mean a very large 8-9 magnitude earthquake. Of course, that also leads to a tsunami that will have an impact all the way down the Columbia River and the waterways as well. So we're going to just take a look real quick at the earthquake tracker, because I want to show you just how much it's still happening. And you can also feel how much of that planetary activity is really translating over to the activity in people's lives, the energetic activity for all of us individually, and everybody is seeming to address it or to interface with it in different ways. And for some people, it's going to be a real struggle. For some people, it's going to be less of a struggle. It's still going to be impactful no matter what. And when we get into the intuitive portion of the transmission, when I share the reading with you today, you're going to see that we're about to embark on the real depth work, right? We talked about this yesterday with the Prince of Cups, right? That we're taking our knowledge and our mental acuity and our mental efficiency and just our mind in general, and making a very concerted and conscious effort to go down into the depths. Well, today we're going to find that we will be fully immersed in that realm, and the dark night of the soul is nothing to scoff at or to brush away. And so, for those of us who have gone through this process many times in the past and have really had to just grind it out in terms of and our density in our spiritual work over time, over many lifetimes, on a multidimensional plane here, then we'll find that we really can hold the light for other people. And yesterday, as part of the transmission, we saw that the light of the world, in terms of the archetypal symbol, right? We have to remember that it's not always just about us too. When we return to our higher self, we tap into that source, it not only lights the way for ourselves, but it does assist other people that are in a different part of their journey, right? We're all going up this staircase together to the same basic outcome, right? We're at the event horizon, going into this black hole together, however you want to conceptualize it. That's just the way that my mind conceptualize it. There is a point of no return here, but we're all on different levels of this escalator up. And it doesn't mean that we are actually any more, any less than anybody else. We're just in a different place based on how we got on that escalator. So it's important that we're, of course, doing the work for ourselves, but to realize when we hold the light for ourselves, it does guide the way for other people. And if you identify as a light worker or a starseed and you take that mission very seriously, then that's what you're here to do. That's what we're all here to do. And it's not just about us and individually and being comfortable and successful, but it's actually about fulfilling this mission that we volunteered for because we felt that we had what is needed for this process. So lots to share today. The moon is currently at its last degree of Aquarius and is going to be moving into Pisces today. There's going to be a T-square between the moon in Pisces and her own nodal axis. Black Moon Lilith conjunct the North Node today. So as much as we may want to hide, right, and there's something to be said for maybe not hiding entirely, but being cautious and protective of our own boundaries and our own energy, there is a deep primal need to align with our soul's journey, which is having us stay very open-minded, right? To be open-minded, just like that Prince of Cups, open-minded as we go into the depths. And we'll be drawn there from a place that I think most people won't even realize that it is in operation, just like Black Moon Lilith is that part of ourselves that we don't often realize is even active, but is very much connecting us to a deeper, more primal part of ourselves, and demands to be heard, and demands to be seen, and demands to be free. So there's a couple of things that are really leading us to this point today. So one thing that seemed to be my experience, at least, is that it's taken more time in my meditation state to really get grounded, not so much grounded, but centered and still, right? The reverberations are very high energy, and they're taking a lot of extra time. So one thing that seemed to help me make sense of this, and to give a symbolic reference here of what to focus on, is the difference between glass and quartz crystal, because they're made of the exact same thing, which is silicon dioxide, right? One silicon atom, dioxide, two oxygen atoms. This comes together and creates this molecule, silicon dioxide, and this is what glass and quartz crystal, and all iterations of quartz, right, and are made at this base level of silicon dioxide. And silicone, I mean, many of you probably already know this, but is very close in its chemical properties to carbon, right? It's very similar. It's different. It is a heavier element, right? It has more mass. It has more protons, more neutrons, more electrons. It has more to it, but it functions very similar to carbon in the way that it is capable of bonding to other elements and its structure. So it's very similar, right? And the difference between glass and quartz is very significant, right? Because glass is very beautiful. Glass has the capacity to melt under high heat and be malleable and changeable. And if you've ever seen people blow glass or are familiar with that, then you know exactly what this process entails, right? That the high heat will melt the glass down, and then you can shape it and mold it and turn it into something beautiful. That is a really important thing to consider, right? How functional silicon dioxide as glass is. So how is it that glass, which is also very fragile, right? It kind of takes nothing to break it, just a little bit of pressure or heat as well, right? Depending on how much heat and the condition in which it's applied can break the glass and can have an impact on the structural integrity of it, right? It's not very strong, and it's not a conductor at all, right? It's not a conductor of any kind of heat or electricity. But then you have the same exact chemical composition of quartz, which is incredibly, it's not conductive. It has a piezoelectric effect, right? It allows for energy and heat to move across its surface, and then so it's called a semiconductor. It's often used in digital technology as the way that we can move signals, digital signals and electricity and all of the things that make our components work, able to move it across its surface and transfer it. And heat and pressure are the main ways that this happens. And so how is it? How is it these two substances that are made of the exact same chemical composition can have vastly different properties, and one will crack under the pressure and the other will actually send the energy along and amplify it, right? Well, it has to do with the fact of how those molecules are all arranged in their lattice structure. And so are you glass, or are you going to be quartz? Because it's going to make a big difference of how you, as an energetic being and as a, what is your crystalline structure? Is it going to break under pressure, or is it going to actually take that energy, conduct it, and transfer it, and be a powerful conduit? And it has all to do with how it is organized. The lattice structure and how it's organized. So that's one way to think about it, because this incredible Aquarian energy with the moon in the last 2 days has been like a laser beam, just like high intensity, just pointing at us emotionally, intuitively, in our subconscious, and it's just been intense, and it's just been beaming and beaming and beaming. And if your the structure of your crystalline structure, if it is as glass, then you're gonna break. You're gonna break, and you're gonna fall apart. Maybe you'll even melt, right? But if you are if your crystalline structure is more like quartz, you're going to take that energy and you are going to be like a computer, right? And I'm not suggesting that you should be like artificial intelligence. That's not what I mean. I mean that you can really take that energy and amplify it and transfer it to where it needs to go and become a semiconductor yourself at an energetic level. Because that's what's been happening with this moon in Aquarius. It really has been like a laser beam just shooting into us, and it can feel really erratic, and it can feel the energy kept building and building and building. And now, as I'm speaking to you, the moon is going to soon move into Pisces, and we are in fact going to kind of melt, right? And so it depends on if we melt entirely or fracture or crack, or we actually transfer that energy into or use it to amplify our own system, and then we go into this deeper place here. As you're going to see with the reading, it's going to give a lot more symbolic reference to kind of wrap your head around where we're going. So it's an exciting time, but it also is very important to realize that everybody's going to be responding to things differently, and to be easy on ourselves and to be easy on other people and compassionate with other people, which is it's not too difficult to do with the moon in Pisces, right? It allows us to dissolve into the experience of compassion and unconditional love, but it also will lead us to completely dissolving into the full range of the experience. And this is where people, like I said, you either break or you become amplified in your energy. And so we get a choice, right, of how we're going to do that. And this is why your spiritual practice, whatever it is so necessary and so important. And it's more important than, I think, than the constant digging for data and information. We are at a point right now in our soul's journey collectively where we are being drawn in a direction that has us really just being open and ready for what we are going to receive. And that's a very difficult place to be when your internal structural integrity is very fragile and more like glass, because you will crack under the pressure. So, but we can also be very compassionately apply our own experience of suffering, either in the past or currently right now, in order to really feel compassion for other people or ourselves, right? We have to be easy on ourselves. When we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and go into our own abyss, it can be horrifying, right? And we all are going to be doing this collectively. So I think that there is a tendency, and I know that I think a lot of people harbor, whether they're going to admit it or not, a very secret kind of like, I want to say I told you so. I want people to actually have to go through some sort of dark night on their own so that I can be like, you see, I was right. And we all have to be honest with ourselves about that. And be easy on ourselves about that as well. Forgive ourselves and, kind of grow up a little bit about it and realize that we're not going to get anywhere as a species and in our evolution unless we are able to truly love each other unconditionally and accept that we are all children of the infinite creator and source. And everything you see, everything you experience, even the darkest dregs at the bottom are still part of this whole experience, and there's a reason that it's here. That is very hard to wrap your head around when it is at the lowest point. So I'm going to bring up the earthquake tracker here in a minute. I'm going to check in with the chat here. Time is certainly not consistent lately, but nothing is these days. I totally feel that. Somebody told me that they somebody told me that they saw that all of the clocks in their house are consistently 15 minutes off from the clock on their phone now. And I was like, wow, that is like the next level of weird, because that was exactly what I was talking about. I was like, on some level, time is being condensed and moving quicker. And that was like a glitch in the matrix right there for that person to be like, whoa, that actually is happening. Something is going on. So we slept so hard last night, it felt like sedation. I'm curious what really occurred while I was sleeping. Yeah, me too. I definitely slept, but it was very intense dreaming. So sometimes I just leave it, right? I'm just like, I don't know what's going on in that space, but I'm just going to let it happen and just take the rest. I had a salt bath last night to clear out some work, so slept well and needed it. Ooh, man, I would love a salt bath right now. Our bathroom is a total disaster. It's the next big project on our renovation, so I would never my bathtub. It's harder to feel still, a bit more shaky at times. I guess it's transition energy. Thanks for fantastic glass crystal analogy. It's very helpful. Well, you're welcome. I thought it was very helpful for me too. It is shaky. I totally agree. And it's taking more focus, right? Just like that energy of the laser beam of Aquarius, right? It's taking more focus not to shatter under the intensity of that energy. And, and it's just a matter of shifting perspective too, right? You don't have to do anything in particular. If you have quartz in your life, you might want to kind of carry it with you, have it around you, or hold it. Even just holding it will allow you to make a connection between your own field and the structure of the quartz itself. And so that will also assist in the process. So thanks for the feedback, guys. I really appreciate it, and I love having these conversations. So we are going to, like I said, I want to take a moment here to look at this earthquake tracker just real quick. Oh, that's the chart, and we're going to go over here. So this is, like I said, real quick, here is the this little offset here, because this is the ring of fire, this whole thing. If I scroll out a little, or go out a little bit, you'll see, and we've seen this many times. Look at it, the big red ones too. You can see that there have been a lot of big earthquakes, and all along the Ring of Fire, but especially kind of in this northern portion. But here, right here, is where we're looking at this little spot here off of the Ring of Fire fault line. And look at them, the cluster here. So if you just look at the actual listing of it, this is the newest first, okay? And I'm going to there we go. 4.2 off the coast of Oregon, 4.6. I mean, I counted them yesterday, and there was 40 or 50 of them between Tuesday and Wednesday, and they're still going, right? They are still going. So let's really pray and put our energy here, because this is this normally would be the foreshocks of a very, very large event. And maybe, just maybe, this is really just going to release the pressure without having to have the big redistribution of those plates. But look at here, 4.6 off the coast of Oregon. And let's see here, Alaska, off the coast of Oregon, Bandon, Oregon, California, Santa Monica, off the coast of Oregon, off the coast of Oregon, off the coast of Oregon. It's just all the way down, right? You can see it all the way. Another California, Oregon, right? These are Denali National Park. That's in Alaska. And even on the other side of the Ring of Fire, tons, and that's a big one. 6-pointer in Japan yesterday. That's a big deal. So I really just want to bring attention to this, because it's important, and because I have a lot of fam out there. My in-laws are still there. I lived there for 15 years. This is something that I am paying very close attention to. So I want to draw attention to it, and also show you that there are big adjustments that are happening right now as a result of where we're all going together. So let's get into the reading, and start to unpack this as well, because we have some imagery that has come back, of course. There's some players that are consistently making themselves known, but we have some very new energy now that we haven't seen in a really long time, including the Hierophant and the Moon card as the center. This is a pretty big indication that the descent into the abyss is now right here, whatever that means. And so if you are not prepared for what this represents, it's going to be a rough ride. And I can already see it in certain areas of my life, right? They're, and not directly connected to me, but, 1, 2, 3 degrees separation of people that are unraveling right now as a result of this. So we're going to take a moment here to really ground ourselves, of course, as we always do, so that we are settled when we receive this energy and a clear channel, as opposed to still in that really erratic or shaky energy as we receive this information, because we don't want to reinforce any kind of fear narrative or or stay completely in our heads as well, because that's how we are jacked into the matrix that is falling away. So the more that we can be in touch with what is permanent and real, which is in fact our own soul, right? Our connection to source or infinite creator or God and our higher self, and then the actual grid of the planet. And that's, I can't express enough. There's so much focus on these upper chakras in a lot of these modalities that we work with here, right? In terms of tarot and energy work and astrology, and the new agey woo-woo stuff, of course, is very focused, hyper focused on these upper chakras. And I teach and I function in my work, and I personally work with a lot of the connections to the planetary grid. And that's very shamanic, right? That is very much where the shaman is rooted and anchored and is into something very permanent and changeless, which is, strangely enough, has a lot to do with this moon card today. So we're going to find our connection here to the earth, whatever you're doing, either standing or sitting. So through your sits bones, or which is just the bottom of your pelvic bone, or your ischium, right? And or your feet, the bottom of your feet as well, which, by the way, are incredibly a lot of nerve endings in the soles of your feet, of course. Also a lot of acupuncture points and at the bottom of your feet, especially where a lot of channels end is in the feet. So this is where we can really establish a very strong connection to the planet itself. And then also too, we're going to start bringing our energy down through that area, imagining a root system that's coming down through our root chakra, through our legs, out through our feet, if we are having our feet on the ground. Connecting in with the Earth Star connects us into the planetary grid, the historical grid of the planet, right? That we are so much more than just this one lifetime, that so much more than just this one lifetime. And that we are supported and secure and sustained by the mother archetype of the earth and Gaia. So, all right, guys, we're going to take a deep breath in and release. Okay. Oops. Let me take a drink here. Okay, so our causal factor here, or part of our cause and effect relationship on our horizontal axis of experience here, we have the Hierophant. Now, I'm curious if anybody remembers a different card that we got last week that had some similar imagery involved in it, and I'll check the chat and see if anybody remembers, and if not, I'll bring your attention to it, because there's a very strong connection to something else that we went over last week. But the Hierophant really is the high priest of whatever our religious system, our belief system, whatever belief system that we find ourselves connected to, is what the Hierophant represents. It's number 5, right? So this is the power that exceeds the 4 elements. It is, if you look at the pentacle, right, with the top of the star, the 5-pointed star, lifted up to at the top towards the heavens, right? And then off, when it's inverted, you have the pentagram, and it has the 5 that is exceeding the 4 elements and grounding down into the material as well. So it really depends on which way you have that 5-pointed star pointing in terms of where this is situated, right? The Hierophant, though, is really connected to the zodiac sign of Taurus, because it is a connection to what is. The sun in Sagittarius is also part of this particular card or archetype as a symbol for the teacher of inner values. And we do know that the sun is in Sagittarius right now. And we'll go all into that astrology in just a little bit. But this is, in fact, the high priest, and represents religious and intellectual traditions that a person may have. So what it also represents is our search for knowledge and illumination. And it shows us the desire to study these things and look for them, rather than just accepting the dogma that is presented to us in our culture. This is kind of the real downside, I would say, if you're going to call it that, with Sagittarius as a sign, and what it represents is because it does represent our cultural institutions that provide collective meaning and value. And so there is a search for knowledge and illumination, and there is a desire to study these rather than just accepting them, but not everybody is on board with this, okay? This reading, again, is really for us and for those who are on the same basic pathway. We're all coming to it from different angles. Like I said, we're all on a different step on the escalator. Some of us are on the same step. Some of us are kind of all clustered together in the same basic area. But not everybody is actually on this search for knowledge and illumination through their own study. So, and they will accept what is given to them by their culture. Terence McKenna would often say that culture is not your friend, and culture that is the operating system of our own consciousness, right? Just like on a computer, you have Windows, you have Mac, the iOS, or you have Linux, right? Any operating system is, the way that it is literally the operating system. It manages the entire operation of the computer. And if you're some computer in some ways, then the culture that you find yourself in is in the operating system, because that's where the real meaning is in the Sagittarian realm, which would be the 9th house in astrology. So we can find very deep fulfillment when we trust our own beliefs. And when we talk about beliefs versus what is true or what is real, I feel like that belief is our own pathway to that truth, right? What we believe is really each individual's trail, right? It is the trail that you take to get to truth or what is real, right? And everybody's is different. And so, again, trusting our gut or our inner instinct is a big part of this card as well, and this archetype, and search for hidden truths as well. And we will be, there will be hidden truths that we will be not so hidden for very soon. And as, of course, we are looking at the moon card as the center of our reading, and also too with the moon moving into Pisces, there's kind of no way out of being fully immersed in the entire experience in and of itself, which means our own beliefs, everybody else's beliefs, right? The boundaries go out the window with the moon in Pisces. But boy, oh boy, the incredible intuitive and imaginative and magical potential is so strong. And when the moon comes and meets Neptune in the next, not tomorrow, and well, maybe later tomorrow. I have to look again exactly what time and when, but soon, right? Tomorrow into the weekend, potentially, the moon will meet Neptune, and this is where that access to those dream realms will become very amplified. So even if you are sleeping deeply right now, perhaps if you are having I'm having a lot of really erratic types of dream sequences that are filled with symbolism, but it's almost like a defragging. That's the experience that I'm having, that a lot of these symbols and experiences and the astral experience is reorganizing things. And I think a lot of that too has to come from the moon in Aquarius. So it's coming into much more of a full immersion in with the moon in Pisces, and the hidden truths will become much more accessible to us as a result of this. So the wisdom and knowledge comes from our experience when we really step into our own role as a high priest of ourselves, right? As opposed to identifying some external figure as our high priest, as would be if you were very connected to your religion as the primary organizing force or your operating system, right? Culture and religion are very interchangeable. So this causal factor is showing that if we that we've really have been searching for knowledge and illumination, and the strong desire to study rather than just accepting them. And Taurus is opposite of Scorpio, and we're going to find that the moon card really does represent the moon in Scorpio, which is one of the most difficult placements of the moon, I would say, because this is where you get lost in the abyss of your own darkness. So in some ways, we have activated or initiated this process as the Hierophant, and then we go into the depths. So let's look at that actually as we move forward. Now, a couple things here I wanted to point out is, if you remember, the World card or the Judgment card, however you look at it, had the same thing surrounded with the masks. But if you remember, it was like water shooting out of it, right? Because at the very end of the cycle, it is incredibly potent, and you have all of this feeling and experience that's just shooting out everywhere. This is the same basic idea, but there's no water shooting out of it quite yet. You also see that the bull is actually behind this figure of the high priest, in a way that it's almost wrapped around him, and the bull or the Taurus, right, representing fertility and the objective world and resources and value. You see that there's these two elephants on the either side of the Hierophant as well. You see the pentacle, almost like the Vitruvian Man, kind of at the heart. You see the three, the trinity of the circles here all brought together. And there's this little silhouette, and she's holding the light, and the light is shining and creating this of the pentacle, right? And so this also is very similar. And she's got the moon, right? Remember, the moon is exalted in Taurus, not at home, but exalted, because it's very similar, right? The moon wants to be embedded or held in something in order to fully be herself, right? Then we see here that she's holding this crescent moon, holding this lantern that is lighting everything up, kind of like the hermit in some ways. But this is much more about the structure of the truth, or of the inner values and the desire to actually study and learn them. It's still based in some sort of reality, and but if you remember the Eon, right, or the Rise of the Phoenix, it's the same silhouette here as well. And so there's this kind of just like this little turning on of the light and being like, hey, you know, you're just kind of at the beginning of this journey, but I'm going to show you a silhouette of where it's all going to lead to. But it's still based on this, you know, I wouldn't necessarily say structured, because it's Taurus, it's not about the same structure as Capricorn would be, for instance, but it's very real. It's very material. It's very much the natural world in its full entirety. And this is a desire to really come into contact with those inner values through our own study. So this has been initiated already. We each are our own high priest on some level. And now we take that and we go into the full experience of the moon. This is number 18, which, reduces down to 9, which is a culmination of energies. And we see a lot of, very important and potent symbolism here. We have the scarab that is pushing the sun disk up from underneath. You can see this is a wave function right here. That's pretty obvious. You also see that we have the Anubis on either side, right? And guarding the gates into the abyss. And it's really pushing up from underneath the light that is really going to allow us. We have to go down underneath, that's what I'm trying to say, in order to then bring the light back up, just like the Hermit does in the 9, right? That is the card of the Hermit. And the Hermit and the High Priestess and the Moon are all very with each other. But the Moon itself as a symbol, number 18, it is, in fact, the actual journey into the dark knowledge of the depths of our soul, right? Now, it is related to Pisces, the zodiac sign Pisces, even though it represents the moon in Scorpio, right? And for anybody with a moon in Scorpio, you know exactly what this feels like, because you have to live this, right? I have a moon in Scorpio, so I do live this, where you go into the depths of your soul, and you have to be very mindful that it's easy to get lost there and not even realize that you're lost. But Pisces is the zodiac sign related to this card, because it is the full range of the experience itself that we are going into. So this card leads us into the blackest depths of our soul. This is the dark night of the soul. And there are no words here. It's just images. And even beyond that, notions, right? I mean, what is a notion, right? We kind of know what it is, but trying to define it is difficult as defining something without words. And so it's just images and notions and impressions down in this area. And we are looking beyond our own face, right? We're looking into the mirror and past it. And so rarely someone enjoys looking into their own abyss. It's not very common. And people that enjoy this process are a very rare breed of person indeed, because unvarnished truth can be very unpleasant. And usually this card shows up when we refuse to see something. And I have a feeling here that collectively there is a refusal to just see what is actually right in front of us. And we will kind of get pushed into this place collectively. So the real danger with the moon is getting lost in our own shadow, right? Not being able to recognize that it is our shadow. And I'm not saying that we should disconnect ourselves from it or not do this work. We have to, but we can get lost here as well, because there's no light other than our own internal light. But the potential here is very deep self-realization, wisdom and maturity, and confrontation with the dark side. So when this card came out, the first thing that I got in terms of an image, speaking of images and notions, is the scene in The Empire Strikes Back, right? Where Luke Skywalker is with Yoda and he's training and he's doing all of the training work, and he's now having to face himself in the darkness, and he really faces Vader, and they get into a battle and he chops his head off, and then the mask of Vader falls away and he sees himself, right? And he's talking to Yoda, Master Yoda, and he says, "I'm not afraid." And Yoda is just like, "You will be." And this encompasses this card so much, because we have to confront that part of ourselves in order to move past it and to integrate it into who we are. And this is going to be happening at a collective level. And it's partly because there also has been a collective initiation into this search for hidden truth. But you don't get search for hidden truth by just going on the internet and digging. You have to actually go into the unvarnished truth of who you are at a soul level in order to confront that part of yourself and come back out with wisdom and maturity. So not for the faint of heart at all. And again, if you're made of glass, you're going to crack under this pressure. So as we move into more of the, if we move into our vertical axis of power, we're going to see that we're setting our course for a new destination, right? Here are 3 people on a ship. You have the 2 people here looking at the chart or the map. You have the captain with the telescope looking off into the distance. You see the rainbow in the background. You see the ship on the ocean. That is Pisces. And so at some level here, subconsciously, where we are rooted, where we're drawing our energy, is that we are starting to set our sights on where we're going, right? And leaving our options a little bit open in terms of where we are going next, right? You don't want to limit yourself to one direction necessarily. And you do want to, we can widen our scope of where we are going. But it's very clear here that at some level, subconsciously, and where we draw our power from is setting our course to a new place, right? To at least start the process of looking at the map and looking through with a vision that's able to see a lot further out while we're on this ship, because we're going to be out in the ocean. So right now, eyes on the prize, baby, eyes on the prize, whatever that means for you. It's important that we are setting our course, and we don't, like I said, we don't have to get hyper fixated on one specific outcome, because they're looking at a map. They are actually conferring with each other about where they're going next, and the captain is actually physically looking out into the distance. But we can widen our scope here. And the important thing is to really draw our own personal power from a very balanced mental perspective of setting a course for a new direction. And with Black Moon Lilith in a conjunction to Rahu today, this is very deep and very strong in terms of where we're all being pulled at a soul level in order to evolve, which is in fact being open to receive that which is that we have discovered, right? And we don't know, and that's kind of the benefit of this whole situation, is that we get to actually be part of the process of creating something new and setting our course for a new direction instead of just going back to the same old shit, right? We actually have the opportunity to start making decisions and choices and being open to a new direction. So we want to confer with each other, right? We want to look out over the distance and consider where we could go. But it's very much about this is really strongly sticking out with that Rahu conjunct Black Moon Lilith. And because Lilith, again, she demands to be heard. She demands to be seen. She demands her grievances to be taken seriously. And if they are not, she is out, right? She is out. And that's what she did. And, there's a lot of different ways that you can approach the symbolic representation of Lilith. But one thing is for sure is that she said, "I'm out." And that's what she did. And she didn't go back, right? So setting her course. We're not going back. right? We're not going back. We may not know exactly what we are looking at or where we're going, but it's important that we widen our scope and not limit ourselves to another operating system that has been set up for us. Because I assure you that that is part of, unfortunately, what's going on here is the controlled demolition that is putting a new upgraded operating system into place for us, and we don't even realize it. So we're explorers, right? We are here to innovate, and we are here to open, into a whole new world, basically. Emily, that was you the other day. A whole new world. That's funny. A whole new world. Yep. Set your course, right? And right now we're in a position where we're just like trying to, we're figuring out where we're going to go, right? And setting our course from there. Now, when it comes to where our attention is and conscious awareness and where we can release that power, there is our Queen of Forces again, right? Now she's upright. So we can really balance our creative potential with the sun and our receptivity with the moon very masterfully, right? This is us, and this is where we are putting our attention, where we can release our power into being this very balanced and powerful person. So balance of power and peace, creativity and receptivity, and only we as individuals and collectively as well can direct the energy of our eternal life. No one else gets to make that decision. They're trying, right? And there's so many different traps along the way to siphon our energy and our focus and attention to create something. And there have been many of these traps set for a really, really long time. But that's ending now, right? That is ending, and we are in control, and we can be in control. And it's important to also realize here, to be very, leadership and mastery means knowing when to hold them and when to fold them, right? Knowing when to yield and knowing when to act. And this is what she represents. And it's based on what? Feeling, right? She is in water and surrounded by a natural setting, but she is standing in water, right? Again, moon in Pisces. We're going to be fully immersed in the experience and feeling it, and still being able to balance the polarity of ourselves in the moment. I think this is really, really powerful. And then we have the outcome of the 10 of Cups. Now it's upright, right? The 10 of Cups, or Mars in Pisces, being satiated but not overwhelmed, right? All of the energies are ending and finding their final grounds. The waters are resting in their final grounds. Doesn't that kind of look like where she's standing? They are resting, right? And you can see that it's almost kind of like a little bit of a valley, a little bit, or like a tiny little gorge where the water is resting here. But it also seems to be very still where this water is, and the water is reaching the lowest elevation and resting, and we find ourselves completely connected to that and being satiated, right? And seeking inner completion and fulfillment, and there's optimism, right? And the 10 of Cups is love, combining all the elements of not only our spirit, but our body as well. And this goes back to the Hierophant, because Taurus really does represent our actual material body. Not so much the healing process, which is more of a Virgo energy, or the larger material context that we're all part of, but Taurus is about our genetics, right? Our DNA code, and and Virgo is more about epigenetics, right? How it actually is expressed as a result of our work and our experiences. Love combining all the elements of spirit and body. This is coming to fulfillment and being satiated emotionally, almost a little bit too much. Again, this can be a little overwhelming, but for those of us who are ready to take this step, or have been taking this step, or are ready for this step to be taken, we're going to find ourselves being full. So full that we're going to have so much to give, right? Because again, Pisces is about unconditional love. It is about forgiveness. It's compassion. And when you are full of the love of the infinite creator and source, and you're just full of love, like unconditional love, you have infinite amount to give to others, right? And so we're going to find ourselves, this is eventually where we get to the end of a cycle and a beginning of a new one. But it's not going to come without a real scary descent into our own darkness as a collective. So, and I think a lot of this is going to have to do with the crumbling of the outside world continuously. So when it comes to the guidance that is provided in this situation, number one, the King of Keys, right? When it comes to setting our course, it's interesting. You can see here, if we go back just a minute to the Three of Scrolls, you can see where the captain's vision is directed through the telescope, and you do see the rainbow that does remind us of our covenant or our contract or a connection with our higher self or with God. But what we also see is that he's looking towards the King of Keys, and the King of Keys is also looking off in the same direction, his castle, his kingdom, where the source of his power, right? And certainly all of his resources consolidated into this area. So the King of Keys being a court card, I mean, really setting a course to embody this type of identity, right? Someone who is confident, astute, very goal-oriented. This is Capricorn, right? And then, Venus is in Capricorn, of course, and we've talked about this, and she's getting closer and closer to Pluto. In fact, she will be in a conjunction with Pluto on the 12-12 portal. The astrology of Sunday the 12th is gnarly. We'll go over all of that tomorrow with the astrology report for the week, but I just want to bring up ahead of time that Venus, that is the day that she conjuncts Pluto the first time, right? Because she'll pass Pluto, station retrograde, and then conjunct Pluto again, and then conjunct Pluto again later in February when she stations direct again in Capricorn. So this will be the first of 3 meetings with Pluto. So be ready, because we're going to be very seduced by the dark side. And there is something very mature and wise about Venus in Capricorn, who she is not necessarily going to be taken in as much as she would be perhaps in other other placements, right? So, but this also shows the masculine energy of being in charge of our own reality, and also too setting the course for getting to the symbol of what represents our own power and authority. So whatever that is for us, we want to really embody this type of energy, and whatever it is, right? And maybe this is somebody outside of you, right? Maybe this is somebody in your life, or somebody in an external fashion that is going to fill this role as the king, right? Who is returning home. That's very much what is happening here, is that the king is returning home and is on his way back to his castle after going off on whatever campaign or battle or whatever he's doing to make sure that all of this is secure. But now there's a return home, and there's a very strong confidence, and there's Capricorn energy all over this right now. And this is where we're setting our course to. Not only this person, but what this person is doing is returning home. Now, what is interesting here as the seagull, right? Animals are innocent. They're perfect, right? They are just themselves, which is why their role as shamanic guides is so incredibly powerful. This is why I use these cards, because they provide guidance in a way that so many other realms don't or can't, right? Because there's no ulterior motive with animals. They are just in their pure essence. So the seagull is saying it's time for deep emotional healing, right? Returning home. And the healing is the return home and return to our own authority over our own lives. And it's interesting because the seagull, lives in, conjunction with the ocean, right? The seagull is a bird, obviously, and then goes into the water and is able to get the nourishment that it needs, and bring it back out. And when we say it's time for deep emotional healing, we have the capacity within our mind and our spirit, right? Because the bird represents this kind of transcendental perspective. We have the capacity to take that part of ourselves, the Three of Scrolls perhaps, and actually dive into our own emotional space. And it's not so much that we're going to submerge ourselves and stay there, although with the moon in Pisces, it may feel like that for a minute. And that's just, it's transient. Remember, the moon is it's transient in its motion, right? It's just taking us through the whole cycle every month so that we have the opportunity to feel all of these different unique connections that it makes every month, as depending on where everything else is. We don't want to submerge ourselves and get lost here. We don't want to be theatrical about it, but we also want to allow for, the release of trauma, the release of density, to go into the space for deep emotional healing, because that is actually going to allow us to get to where we want to go, which is a return home and a return to some sort of authority, right? And again, this could very well be an actual person returning back to the source of their power and their leadership. Okay, so we're setting the course here, and on some level deep within us, it is not only allowing us to access this deep emotional healing for ourselves, but they kind of feed into each other. The deep emotional healing that we engage with is going to also allow us to set a course for a new direction, right? They're interwoven and linked with each other. They're not mutually exclusive at this point. So speaking of animals, so when it comes to the Queen of Forces, the tiger it says you're being called upon to provide leadership, so trust that you're capable of doing so. But something very specific about this card that is related to what the Queen of Forces represents, as I said earlier, is the ability to, discern when to advance and when to yield, or how to balance our creativity and our receptivity. Because what we're going to find here is this lightning bolt keeps coming back around, providing the very disruptive and challenging splitting apart or destruction that, of course, has been on its way for a while, as we all know, but we can't really predict when and where the lightning's going to strike exactly. We can kind of forecast, but nobody ever really knows, right? And so, and the destruction is something we can't do anything about. All we can do now is move forward from the destruction, plant new seeds, condition new ground, move forward and set down new roots, right? Because that's happening. Right. Excuse me. That's happening. And the leadership that we can provide is being able to balance ourselves and know when to act and know when to yield. And that is going to have a big impact on how we move through this time, because it's going to be so disruptive on a collective level. And if you're in a position of leadership, or you feel like that you're here to provide some sort of guidance or leadership or facilitation of that, then your ability to balance within yourself these two polarities of action and receptivity, or when to advance and when to yield. And I'm not saying that we should do we need to know when to do either, right? Because this will throw us off if we are getting fully engaged and immersed in the destruction of this process. It's important that we keep our still as things blow apart. And if you are relying on this tree, for instance, to be your whole world and it splits apart, then it's going to be very difficult to not get lost in the darkness, which is where we're all going together. So ultimately, there is fulfillment beyond our wildest dreams that is coming, right? Fulfillment and love, but it is based on love, unconditional love, compassion, and a blending of our spirit and our body, right? Which is what we are meant to be, is a spiritual being in a human material experience. That is what the whole point was of our creation. So we want to realize that, we want to live that, we want to break free of that which is trying to keep us, those two things, separated. And for a long time they have been, and there are lots of things happening right now, and they have been for a while, but now they're becoming more obvious through certain medical interventions that are being forced upon us, that are separating those two things. I personally, this is my personal belief, and I've been having a conversation about this with people, just continuously. I don't believe that you can ever lose your soul if you are in a material body. Like if you're alive in a human body, yes, it becomes detached. Yes, it can become fragmented. This is what shamanic work specifically is meant to address. This is soul fracturing, and detachment is a big part of trauma. Right? And there are lots of things that have been happening for a long time that are instigating that trauma. It's just now becoming more obvious and more condensed and more, kind of in our face with certain things that are happening right now that are drawing a line in the sand for us. But I don't feel like you can ever lose your soul, because it's infinite, because it's a part of source, right? Now, when you do lose your soul, I think that is the moment of physical death, right? And then your soul actually does completely detach from the body. So not everybody agrees with that, and that's how they create the idea of NPCs. That's how they create the idea of zombies. And I'm not suggesting either that I'm not saying definitively I know if that's possible or not. I believe that it's not possible. If you're still alive in this body and you are at least awake and aware, your soul is tethered somewhere. It might be a very faint tether. It might be the thinnest of threads, right? And there may be a time where that thread breaks and the soul leaves. But the soul is the whole point. That's how we create the energy. What if we're soulless, there's nothing to us. We're not a commodity at that point if there's no soul attached. I don't know. This is something I'm still working with, and I'd be really curious about people's feedback, and I'd love to have like an ongoing chat about this, maybe on Telegram or something. Perhaps I'll start it, because I think there's a lot of misinformation and intentional disinformation going on, but everybody's entitled to their own belief system, and that's just what I believe. So, but I do know that it is the soul becoming fractured, the soul becoming detached is very real, and trauma does that, and that's a survival mechanism. So, and speaking of which, this is a great segue actually into the astrology for today, because there's such a strong potential to want to hide or to protect ourselves with a moon in Pisces when we find that that's in square to the nodal axis, our soul's karma and journey. And with Black Moon Lilith involved, it's really hard. It's going to overpower, I think, that desire to really just like hide ourselves. So let's look at that. Let's look at the astrology for today and kind of ground this into some actual cycles in the cosmos, because they are here to assist us. A whole new world indeed. Barb says, funny, I felt to hold a rose quartz crystal against my heart last night after my salt bath. That is a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. And yeah, I really feel that color of the rose quartz corresponds so strongly to the heart chakra as well. I think that's a really good thing to do, and I would recommend that to just about anybody at this point. If you have access to rose quartz, you can put it right on your heart chakra, and it's just such a beautiful thing to do. And I'm not surprised that you felt compelled to do that, actually. So anyway, let's look at the chart for today, if I can find it. Okay. So here is our astrology chart for today. I'm actually going to show the current transits, because now, as you can see, the moon has officially moved into Pisces from Aquarius. So we're going to take a little bit of a journey back in time, of course, to look at some of the last moon transits and moon aspects in Aquarius before she moved, because one of them that's really important is that she came into a conjunction with Jupiter and then squared Mars right after. So let's take a look at that, because that was, again, happened overnight, or late last night, very early this morning, depending on where you're at in the world. And so this was, boy, oh boy. So this degree that we're finding Jupiter in right now is really about how, and I've talked about this before, is the importance of things like traditional skills and artistic values that are very deeply rooted in our instinctive feelings. And they can be a frame of reference for our emotions. So, and this is the real inspiration for the title of the transmission, because the permanence, it represents where Jupiter is, the permanence of the real. Is the ultimate assurance to our hearts, right? Lots of things are going to shift. Lots of things are going to change. Lots of things are going to dissolve or crumble away. But there's something permanent that is beyond all of that we can tap into. And Jupiter, for all of the ways that he's kind of a total asshole, his job truly is to defend the firmament, right? The entire dome, not getting caught up in the drama or the minutia of the day in and day out of the human being, but to actually protect the entire experience. And so in some ways you can almost see Jupiter as the actual dome of the firmament, if you think about the planet as a toroidal field and as our electromagnetic field being a protective shield. And that's Jupiter's realm, right? And that is where the expansion comes on. That's the idea of larger than life and big picture and broad horizons, because it's all about that big picture for Jupiter. So it's been difficult in Aquarius because Jupiter wants to be in Pisces, right? Wants to be in the full expansion of limitless potential and experience. And so in Aquarius, it's been the lightning bolt constantly, but that lightning bolt has been keeping us in our lane and keeping us on track. So in this particular degree, when the moon meets Jupiter and our emotions expand considerably, what it's doing is simultaneously expanding, but also consolidating to a singular point of that permanence, and gives us assurance at a heart level. So no matter how many shifting forms the face of life may present to us, right, which is a big thing that's happening right now, there's always something, some sort of token, some sort of object, token, image, idea of something that endures, right? Enduring stability, on which the ephemeral is unable to make an impact. This is really important. And so even with the intensity of the energy, the moon meeting Jupiter last night really brought this to very personal experience of what this is. And so we realize these values and have a real gift for using them. Now, the downside of this particular degree of Aquarius is that we get caught in the meaningless trappings of society, right? And we are not actually using our own feelings and tapping into the permanence of what is actually real beyond the material reality that is always subject to the cycle of time, right? And that's what Capricorn and materialism ultimately shows us. And that is why it's so... Again, this is why the devil card in the tarot has the people trapped, right? And it's not so much that they are trapped, but when we are a soul or an infinite being in a material experience, we do have to follow the rules of that material experience. But that doesn't mean that there aren't things that are beyond that can't be impacted. This moon conjunct Jupiter was an expansive experience personally for each of us into our intuitive knowing, but it also gave us something. It's like there was something that, because Jupiter is an advocate and represents good fortune and luck a lot of times, and will really represent us when we are in line with the collective value and belief systems that have meaning. And so something was given to us. Maybe we are not fully aware of what was given to us, right? Remember, Jupiter rules Sagittarius. And so again, the Hierophant, being kind of connected to the sun in Sagittarius as the teacher of inner values, Jupiter sometimes can seem like not necessarily a teacher, but a wisdom keeper or a teacher in some ways, or take this very loosely, a guru. It's easy to get caught up in those words and miss the larger picture here. But something was given to us, I feel like, during this conjunction. It was passed on to us personally and in our subconscious. And perhaps this is what is initiating the setting of a new course, even though we're not fully conscious of it yet. It was still presented to us, this token, this surviving token of something that endures beyond what is the decay of material life that is inevitable. So this was a really important moment. And then right from there is when the moon came into a square with Mars, though. Now, Mars is now at the degree of the sun at the full moon lunar eclipse, okay? Right? Mars is at 27 to 28 degrees Scorpio, right? This is a return to the inner integrating principle at the core of all life, right? We become weary of all the outer shows of our culture. Yep, it was one thing to be, marching down the street, waving the banner and being like, look how great our society is, or whatever, right? The military band, aggressively glorifying the values that are holding it all together. And people go to battle and go to war based on the power of these values. The next step in that is that it only takes you so far, and you start to turn back inward, right? And here is going into the moon in terms of Scorpio, is going back into what is at the center that is going to actually hold us all together, that's beyond all of that. And so Mars is here, and Mars wants to go to battle, right? Mars wants to act on things. Mars wants to go and initiate and act on, really driving us to act on our own self-interest in the experience of coming together. But now it's kind of like, remember that eclipse and remember what the sun represented at that moment, which was pulling us back into something that is holding us all together, that's more than just our culture. It is something timeless. It is something formless. It is something that is integrating everything at the core. And so the thing is, though, with Mars here, we want to kind of aggressively act on this. And the moon in a square, in this fixed square at this position of 28 degrees Aquarius. Now, remember, this is the natal moon of the United States birth chart, right? It is the knowledge and skill used in our natural surroundings to satisfy our basic needs, right? I would say, we don't have to, you do whatever you want. This is really, there is tension in this square. What it's doing is allowing us, I would say, to find ourselves in a crisis, the ability to center our attention on what is practical and necessary in the moment, right? And so, right, everything can be a beautiful, in the Dane Rudger astrological mandala, when you look at this particular degree in the Sabian symbol, it's a tree that's felled, right? A tree falls over and it's sawed up, and it's for wood for the winter, right? And you can make every action in your life be like a ritual that has deep significance, right? Carry water, chop wood, carry water, right? That in itself is giving you all the things that you need and is able to take from your natural surroundings what you actually need to survive. But that in itself can have the deep significance, right? That is really important. And in a square to Mars that is just so loudly being like, we all need to come together and act on this core integrating principle, which is really important too. There's this part of us that is also kind of, throwing that off track, right? These fixed squares, right? One's going one direction and is very strong, and the other's going in another direction, very strong. And when they meet, they all crumple each other. And so when you just relax and lean into it, you're less likely to get hurt. And it's not to say that we shouldn't be doing one thing or the other. What it's suggesting here and showing us is that there was a moment here where we realized it was just as important to be able to take care of our basic needs in the moment. And maybe that's emotional, and maybe that's intuitive, and maybe that's something that is formless and not able to really be actively understood, right, on the surface, but we do feel at some level a need to adapt to our immediate environment by making everything that we do to satisfy our vital needs a ritual. That way, we're not entirely dependent on the feeling of coming back to this core integrating principle and acting on it, which is what Mars wants to do. Mars is really drives us to act on these things. There is also this possibility in this moment to feel into the fact that everything we do can have this same deep significance, right? And it doesn't have to be necessarily something that is this grand gesture or this battle mode. And you can really see that unfolding just in general. So don't forget that and I talked about this so many times, right? When the Pleiadians, through Barbara Marciniak in particular, when people ask, what should I do? What should I do? And they're just like, mow your lawn. This is the Pleiadians. Mow your lawn. Do your laundry. Wash the dishes. Take your dog out. You know what I mean? Like, take care of your actual basic needs and turn that into a ritual. And that's going to actually create and cultivate a very enthusiastic desire to be at work and to work on the world around you and to be part of that, right? Instead of just like blaring, just marching around and like really kind of almost forcing the issue. And I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't be engaged with that too or act on something, but this square really brought that into our awareness. And then the moon, right, and this again, very early this morning, or late last night, or whenever it was for you. So again, it could very well have been a dream sequence that really brought this out. And then the moon moves into Pisces. And so we're going to take a look at a different chart here to show you this T-square that's really strong. So let's look at it here. There it is. So you can see the T-square very obviously. Here's the moon in Pisces right here. Here is the north node in a conjunction with Black Moon Lilith. And then, of course, K2. Now, keep in mind, you can see right here that as Mars continues its transit, it's eventually going to reach K2 as well. And then we're going to have a stirring, another instance of the stirring of those unconscious energies. And it is going to stir Mars to act in a way that I don't think we've experienced yet, right? That's going to be pretty strong too. And Mars in Sagittarius, I've talked about this before, is like social justice warrior to the max, right? I mean, this is the warrior of the collective value system. And perhaps this is going to break something loose that absolutely needs to come out. But we'll get there. I'm showing you here this T-square with Black Moon Lilith and the moon in Pisces. So the second degree of the Pisces moon, or just Pisces in general, the first degree is the distilled essence, right? The very beginning of what it means to be in Pisces, which is full immersion into the experience of being one with everything, right? And the second degree, just like all of the signs, is its contrast. So what do we have to do there? Well, the Sabian symbol is very interesting. It's a squirrel hiding from hunters, right? And it really represents our need to ensure not only our future subsistence, right, because the squirrel is hiding away its food, but to protect ourselves from aggressive social elements. That's the downside here to being in Pisces, is that the boundaries go out the window, right? You're an open book to everything else, just as much as everything else is an open book to you energetically. And so there is something to be said for this protection or caution. So social processes. Oh boy, this is a phrase that I read that stuck out. Social processes always cast strong shadows. So there is a need for self-protection and caution when you are fully immersed in the experience of oneness with everything. And so the benefit here, or the upside to this degree, or what we can get from it is a real strong gift for setting the conditions for all of our personal participation in these events, right? This is about understanding your own energetic boundaries as an empath, for instance, and set the conditions consciously, right? You know when you need to hide, you know when you need to not hide, right? The downside of this is being completely timid and having no boundaries for yourself whatsoever. So this is the moon in that position, but it's in this T-square to the nodal axis, and then with Black Moon Lilith in conjunction with Rahu. So even though we're feeling the need to maybe hide or to protect ourselves energetically, because I do feel like that is part of what's happening, is that we find ourselves being harvested very easily in this space, and with the moon and with the moon card at the center here, that's the realm where we easily are harvested without a strong sense of our light within and some courage. And at least we do have Mars in Scorpio. That does give us a certain amount of courage to go into this space and know who we are and why we're there, right? So there's something, I'm not trying to say that it's all negative with Mars in Scorpio. It's just in that square to the moon in Aquarius in that moment, it showed us where the tension would be in terms of what is at the core of our meaning and what are we going to do about it. But this particular T-square, right? So what does a T-square do? Well, the object that is at this point here, which is the moon in Pisces, actually helps release the tension or harness the tension of an opposition. So an opposition is like, either you can think of it as like a seesaw, right? So you got to find the balance or the fulcrum, right? Or you can think of it as like a tug of war, and only when both sides are equally distributing their energy and power do you have all of this potential energy. So if one side pulls too hard, the other side is going to release its energy kinetically. So an opposition is a lot of very strong potential energy. The best way to use that or harness it is in this T-square. So how do we exercise caution and boundaries in a situation where we are at a primal level that we don't even really may not fully be aware of yet, being pulled into a space in our minds of being totally open-minded, just like the Prince of Cups? Well, I think we really have to execute some strong boundaries, some cleverness, and know when to shield ourselves, know when to hide, exercise real caution in the astral realm, okay? That's very important, because we can't not do this. We can't not go into the depths. There's just no way around this right now. This is our karma at a soul level. This is where we are going as a society at a soul level in order to evolve. And Black Moon Lilith is demanding it, right? She's demanding that we go there, and is so strong that we may not even realize. And some people are going to be pulled here in a very destructive and dark way, right? And it's still leading them to the same place as people who are more aware. So either way you look at it, we're still going. It's just that the moon in Pisces in this moment, I feel like that despite the square to each of these nodes is actually the point that will allow us to do this masterfully and to have really strong, so strong astral boundaries. Because like I said, the Agent Smiths are working overtime right now because they know this is a pinnacle point. And they are doing everything they can to make changes to the program, to fix all the glitches, to install new operating systems perhaps. And so we need to be very masterful. And I think this is just exercising some caution, to put it simply, as we go into these realms underneath to really do this deep soul work as a collective is right here. So, and that is really the main. I mean, there's not a ton of other transits today in terms of the moon in Pisces. So when we come into tomorrow, we're going to talk about the astrology for the weekend. Of course, 12/12 is a huge deal. And also, too, like I said, the moon is going to meet Neptune, and also it's going to be the first quarter square, right? The first quarter square after a solar eclipse, which is going to be a sun in Sagittarius and the moon in conjunction with Neptune, as I'm going to show you, squaring the sun. So, and like I said, we're going to talk a lot more about this tomorrow, but that first quarter square is a crisis in action. What are we going to do? And as you see, it's going to be right after this, within the next day, that not only Mercury will be at the galactic center, but the moon or the sun is soon going to have that square with Neptune. So tomorrow is going to be really important in terms of getting ourselves energetically and intuitively, emotionally aligned with Neptune, and really being cognizant and sensitive to what is being brought to our awareness when the moon meets Neptune, and what that tension in that square with the sun really feels like, and what we're going to do about it, because it's going to have a really big impact ultimately on this square between the sun and Neptune directly, because this is going to be like a real big battle with our ego and our conscious awareness and how we express ourselves, and something that is the transcendental and the cosmic consciousness. So it's going to be really important, I would say, to understand this square, the first quarter square of the sun and the moon, because it's going to be so close to Neptune when it happens. And there'll be a real opportunity in that moment to figure out exactly, are we going to find our, it's not even about this or that. It's about leaning into the discomfort of, really wanting to get to a safer place, right? We want to get away from the menacing and destructive elements of our society and get to a state where we can actually be safe, and the moon in Pisces, where we are accessing some sort of some much deeper ancestral karmic program that has been invested in us for a really long time, and is playing itself out right now. There's such a strong propensity here to act hastily, and it depends on what our value system really is and what we are aligning with, because that's the other thing about Sagittarius. It really depends on what religion, belief system, dogma, philosophy that you identify yourself with really impact how you express yourself in that moment. So that is the astrology for today. That is the transmission for today. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. And if you are interested in a reading, or interested in, where am I? Sorry, guys. I'm still kind of getting used to a new function here. So if you're interested in reading or energy work in particular to support your process, you can do so by going to my website. Everything you need is in the description box below, so you can access that. So, and stick around if you want to still participate in the chat in the last couple minutes here of the stream, because I'm going to bring up my outro screen and give you more information about how you can support this work, how you can get more information, and how you can book a session with me. So I love you guys. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Have a great day. We'll be together tomorrow for the astrology, the weekly astrology by sign, right? And I'll have the glyphs ready for you so that you can keep track of where we are in the process, and you can listen to the signs that you want to listen to. And yeah, have a great day, guys. God bless you. I truly mean that. And we will be together tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.